שלום לכולם, ערב טוב. כיף מאוד שבאתם ככה עד לחדר הווירטואלי שלנו. לי קוראים סתיו, אני מנהלת את הקהילה של חברת PMsphere, החברה של אסנת שכרגע לא איתנו הערב, אבל רותי כאן איתנו היום. וכיף ממש להיות פה, כיף שברק מסכים לספר לנו ככה סיפורים מעניינים על איך עסקים קטנים לוקחים הרבה מאוד תשומת לב. את ההקלטה הזאת אנחנו נעלה לאתר ביחד עם עוד הקלטות שיש לנו של כל המיטאפים שלנו ביוטיוב. וזהו, אני מקווה שיהיה לכולנו מעניין היום. ברק, הבמה שלך.
תודה. אז אני אציג את זה באנגלית, אבל תרגישו חופשיים גם לשאול אותי בעברית בהמשך. Thank you all for joining. I'm going to talk a lot about the experiences we've had in Visita and our lessons learned about working with very small businesses. I'll talk a bit about the definitions of sizes of businesses according to the government in the USA and how they're divided, and really drill down on the smaller ones. I'll open places for questions in each section of the slides, so bear with me and keep your questions just to help me keep the flow. So very briefly about me. Married, 2 daughters that basically occupy my hobbies for now, parenting and working, especially with the quarantines we've had. I've been in the services industry for the past 13 years, and the past 7 years in software and SaaS, the past 3.5 years in Visita. Basically founded the customer success and support teams in Visita. It's now 3 teams of Visita. We have another company we bought called Wistem, so we're building a customer success team there to work with the support team. It's all really fun and exciting, a very fun company to work with. I'll talk a bit about them in a bit. So the agenda for today is very shortly about Visita, what we do and how we got to learn a lot about small businesses. That's our bread and butter. I'll present some facts about small businesses that will basically lead up to a lot of the decisions we've made about the process of working with them. And then, to me, the core of this session is our lessons learned from working with small businesses. And it's important for me to say at the beginning, this is work in progress. We keep learning, we keep changing. So this is definitely not a finished product. I don't think it will ever be. But that's, I'll talk a lot about what led us to the processes we've had today, why we made those decisions, and a lot of things will change in the future again. We're still learning all the time from other companies, from our own success and failure, so we'll talk about that a lot. To finish this, I'll talk about the really good process and relationship we have with our product team. It's taken a few steps up in the last year, which makes this really exciting for me to present, because we've built a really great feedback loop process here in the company in Visita, and I'll be happy to share why this works for us and how it actually goes in practice. So let's quickly talk about Visita. It's a business management tool for very small companies, accompanied with a learning platform, basically a holistic solution for very small businesses that need to run their business. Serving over 100,000 businesses with 50 million clients worldwide. Been in business since 2010. Founded by Itzik Levy, our CEO, and tailored for service providers. And you can try and picture those businesses, the smaller ones from the healthcare, finance, law, construction, home services, coaching, fitness, beauty, anyone that provides services, if it's face-to-face, online, for a crowd, we're tailoring a solution for them. Just a bit more about the product itself. It's basically a CRM to manage the clients and their day-to-day that's accompanied by calendar management and scheduling and online payment solution for billing and invoices, and marketing solutions for less drips, but more working with clients on a regular basis and keeping in touch. It's all accompanied by a learning platform that touches all those day-to-day needs of small businesses. And if anyone has questions about Visita, I'm not going to do a pitch here, but I'm happy to talk more. You can reach out afterwards and I'll be happy to detail more. And now a bit about, maybe a bit more about small businesses and facts about small businesses. This is based on a lot of actual research and studies made that I'll be happy to share with you. If you ask, it's all actually written down here in my speaker notes. But basically, this is the summary of a lot of material. And also we see this in practice. A small business, by definition, is 500 people and lower. That's not a small business the way we see it in Visita, or our experience. We're talking a lot more about the solopreneurs, smaller teams, up to 20 people is where we shine. And these facts really talk well to those types of businesses, which have two main elements. One is they need to build their business and they need to run their business. And we see that a third of the year, if you take out weekends, it's really a lot of the time is for admin work. If it's chasing clients, if it's working with staff, think about a solopreneur that has a small office and accepts clients. They're everyone in the company. They're the CEO, they're the janitor, they're the secretary, they take the calls, they pay the bills. It's a lot of hats to wear in the same company, and it's a lot of responsibility. So that's where we try to put ourselves in when we talk to small businesses. We try to understand at least a lot of what they need to juggle to make their business work. And that's what's leading us to build the solution we do in Visita, and also really drives our customer success process, which I'll dive into a bit later. But small businesses, they have it rough, if you will. It's the smaller the business, the more likely it is to fail. It's just a fact. If we look holistically on all the small businesses, the 500 and lower, a third of them don't survive the first 2 years, and half of them don't survive the first 5 years. The smaller you get, the higher these percentages are. And we see this in practice in Visita. Really, the difference between a solopreneur, a one-person business, we can talk to them from the get-go. It seems very exciting, and they won't make it 3 months. Their business closes, and we see it in practice. While a team of even 2, 3, 5 people, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, they last much longer, from our experience. So this is those are facts that I've taken from a lot of studies, but we really see those in practice, and it's felt in the way they conduct their business. And then COVID hit, and a lot of small businesses that used to do most of their work in a very face-to-face manner, if it's accepting clients in office or visiting their offices, there is a new normal, and we're digitalizing everything. We also experienced this in Visita because we are fortunately experiencing growth during COVID, because a lot of businesses really do need to digitize their business. They need to go online. We help facilitate that. It helped us learn a lot about them and their needs, and what really a lot of burning needs come into play every day. This leads to a lot of opportunities for the small businesses themselves. Again, based on studies, they're more likely to grow, to get more customers, and to be more innovative in their process and their offering. And with Visita specifically, we saw a lot of addition to the use cases clients bring to the table when they had to move online or hybrid, part face-to-face, part online. If the business is willing to take clients back to the way things were, it doesn't mean their clients are willing to do the same. So those that were willing to adapt to the new normal really became really innovative, came with really great solutions. It's really fun to experience this with them. Any questions about this before I start talking about what we've experienced as far as the day-to-day work with small businesses and how our process looks like and why?
No, I think it's clear. I'll just remind to the audience that if you have any questions, feel free to write your questions in the Q&A. And if you would like to join us as hosts, so just say that as well, and we will add additional participants as panelists. So you have the Q&A session the Q&A section to write any questions if you have.
Okay, great. I'm not following the Q&A, so if there is a question.
That's fine.
So before I drill down to the slides, I'll tell you a bit about the thought process behind this. I'm gonna talk basically about the way I see it, the 3 steps we took to make the decisions we've made and develop the processes we have today. It's built around our learning of the client side expectations. So what the clients themselves, the businesses themselves expect, how they conduct themselves, and we've made a lot of decisions around that. I'll follow it by talking about the best practices we've learned over time, given a lot of data that I'll present here. I'll talk a lot about the data, I'm not showing any graphs. And then finally, I'll talk about how we envision scaling the process, what we're doing today to basically take control over that. Small businesses, and now talking in practice for software companies that want to work with small businesses, it's working with masses to be profitable eventually. I mean, we're not a nonprofit. Most software companies are not, so I'm not trying to hide that or anything. We need to find a cost-effective solution to deal with masses of clients. I presented at the beginning, we have over 50,000 businesses that work with Visita. we have, they have a lot of clients, a lot of questions come up. This is a business critical application that we provide to them, and they have a lot of expectations. So let's talk a bit about that. Like Spider-Man, business critical software comes with a great responsibility. Sorry for geeking out on you. But we experience this in all levels of the post-sales process. If it's a client that spoke with our sales team and know they have a CSM at the other end of the credit card, they, at a lot of cases, won't touch the software because they are really looking forward to someone taking their hand and walking them the distance. That's on one hand. On the other hand, we also experience those that dig in, try themselves, and have so many questions when they get to a CSM. Another element of that is we see this a lot in our support team, where if you again put yourselves in the shoes of those small businesses, they're actually putting their clients in our software. They manage their business, their calendar, their payments. If something doesn't work the way they expect it, either because they don't understand the software or because something happened with the software, they expect you to be there and immediately. And this is really counterintuitive to what a lot of people from the SaaS industry come with. So I worked, my previous job was in corporate that provided services to enterprise companies. When I started in Visita, I had in mind what I thought was the expectation for resolution times, turnaround times, for both support and customer success. And there is this is not working in practice. The smallest of businesses expect you to give them turnaround that's pretty much immediate. If our system doesn't work and it's managing their business, over the weekend, they would expect us to fix it. They would expect us to reply in minutes, not hours, not days, not 24 hours, but same day response, most of the time same day resolution. That's the built-in expectation of them. Again, remember, they have all the hats in the company. They are not the contact, and the stakeholder is someone above them, referencing all of those that work with enterprises. Those are the people that bought the software, and if it doesn't work, they lose money. And that can be just one person that wakes up all the company up, and we have tens of thousands of them. So we built a lot of infrastructure to support that expectation. If it's in our customer success, I'll drill down about that in the next slide, but a lot of written content, a lot of marketing material that will help them basically adopt their business process into our software and minimize the questions they have. They still have a lot of them. But we basically, on both the customer success and support side, aim to provide a very rapid response time. But probably the biggest thing we experience with small business, and this isn't the expectation slide, but it's not pure expectation. We can have in customer success, we can have, a CSM can take 5 different clients a day or more from the same profession. Let's just call it, let's give an example of a fitness coach. A CSM can have 5 different fitness coaches in a row, discussing with them how to put Visita to practice. All 5 of them will have different use cases of how they run their business. And this is a challenge for our software to see how we can provide all those services to all those use cases. It's not even workarounds, but basically fit the software to any vertical in any profession in any way they look to use the system. So if we provide building blocks and they need to build them, it's not enough. I mean, if you give me wood, nails, and hammer, I won't be able to build a house. So they need that escort for all those use cases. And what we've basically learned in customer success is that every profession, at least the common ones, we need to learn about all of them. So like the cliche says, know your clients better than they know themselves. I don't think we'll ever know a specific coach or lawyer or psychologist better than they know their own business. But we experience a lot of them and the process of a lot of them. And we have a lot of good advice to give. We document it all in what we call in the industry playbooks. What would be the best known practice for us for each profession. And we try and adopt as best we can to what they do today and mold the system to their need.
Well, can I stop you with a question? You've mentioned 50,000 different businesses.
Yeah.
And what is the size of the customer success team?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
The number of customer success managers?
I'll talk about that in the next slide. I'll dive into that process.
Okay. And there's one question from the audience. You say you have worldwide customers. Is 20 people typical to all countries? I assume.
Let me amplify the volume because I didn't hear the end of the question.
Is 20 people typical to all countries? I assume this is the size of the business.
Oh, so yeah, we see a 20 business, 20 staff business across the globe. Not talking specifically the number 20, but anywhere between 10 to 20. I wouldn't say it's the most common business we get. This for us is a larger client. We have those. And we don't see a limit in the geolocation for the size of the business. There is no specific trend per country. So I'll move to the next slide and really talk a bit, again, I'm saying a bit, I'm gonna drill down onto the practice of what we do today and why we do it. So what drives a lot of our process in customer success today, surprisingly, is churn, or the positive end of it is retention. The figures you see at the top are industry figures. They're not specific to any, not specific to us, not specific to any specific provider. Based on a lot of surveys, this is the industry standard. SMB churn annually is between 30 to 60%. I'm not going to give you exact numbers from Visita, but this is the reality. Churn is a real issue. Not because specifically the software is the issue, but involuntary churn, as we like to call it, it is very dominant in this industry. If you compare it to mid-market and enterprise. And like any good business, this what initiated the customer success process in Visita. The need to retain as many clients as possible. but we always have in mind the cost-effective process. Would it be cost-effective to handhold a one-man business that pays $19 a month and give them a CSM that walks them through 2-3 calls until the point they fully adopted the system? Realistically, it's not cost effective, and that's always something that we keep in mind. So when we started to explore what would be the best way, a lot of people would say small businesses, it's definitely one-to-many. It's take a good marketing blast software and give them valuable content, drive value, make sure they read the right articles, make sure you touch the points they care about for their business. We're doing this. We find it a lot more effective with the clients that have already, quote unquote, bought in, adopted, heavy users. This works for them. This doesn't necessarily work for those that are new and won't necessarily go into the system, which surprisingly, a lot of, we used to have this in the past. This was a problem, a real problem we had. A lot of businesses bought Visita, even annual plans, and never logged in after they bought the system, never logged in. We found when we started this 2.5 years ago, this specific process, this isn't exact, but that's what I remember because it was so in my face. Maybe 2 out of 3 accounts that churned after 3 months or 1 year and bought our higher tier accounts never logged into the system. It was a lot to take in. At that time, we really focused on our one touch. So basically looking at all tiers of clients and giving them an onboarding session. It's pretty common in the industry. It can be very effective depending on the software you offer. And we've really refined that, in my subjective opinion, to the best of our ability. And there was absolutely no difference in adoption or retention between clients that got an onboarding and clients that did not get an onboarding. And that was the point where we took a very counterintuitive decision and went with a high touch approach for very small businesses. Again, putting into mind, lifetime value isn't very high, their subscription cost isn't very high, and yet we're giving them a high touch approach. Before I drill down about that, it made a difference, a big difference. 20% more adoption, 8% more retention globally for clients that went through customer success versus those that didn't. And with the process we've built today, we're able to get to roughly 1/3 of our clients at a time, which I believe is very good. I mean, we're always working on improving that. But let's talk about, I think it's valuable to talk about why we've made that decision and where we really focus, how we saw the benefit there. We're not talking to all clients now. We've made the decision to basically approach those that meet a certain barrier of how much they paid us. Very intuitive, basically. But this has a lot more to it, which I'll get to in the next slide. But we're looking at our higher tiers and giving them a CSM that has a process that's hybriding sales, implementation and customer success, as most of you probably know it today.
So may I ask, sorry, who owns the onboarding? Is that the CSM? Is it support?
The CSM owns onboarding. So,
but you said they only contact a specific segment within the small businesses.
Right.
So what about all the rest? Oh,
I'll get to that. So
sorry.
It's fine. The higher tiers get a CSM basically that reaches out as soon as possible after they converted. If it comes from our sales team, usually there's sort of a handshake there, a digital handshake where the salesperson schedules the CSM right after the sale. And they walk them through the onboarding process. And anytime data shows or the client needs, afterwards. So we walk them through until they feel or we feel they're in business. They've fully taken their business into our platform. And what we have really focused on in our R&D department, to answer your question, Karen, is the smaller tiers don't need as much handholding. The idea behind the system is that it would be easy to use and intuitive. Even though it's business critical and has its niches and its complexity, the less you use of it, the easier it is. So we've invested a lot in the product onboarding and the way the product speaks for itself. And honestly, we see that for the lower subscriptions, their retention and adoption rates are higher than the retention and adoption rates of our higher tiers that don't get a CSM. Our higher tiers that don't get a CSM are our highest churn clients, because our product really invested in wizards and tutorials. The support team invested a lot in written content that really gives help in a very brief manner, so you don't need to read a lot of text to get what you need. I hope this answers your question.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. But basically the hybrid mode of a CSM, going back to that, and the cost-effective mindset, we don't have a static book of business. So a CSM at a time will have a set number of clients they focus on, but this is a dynamic set of clients. Those that graduate, quote unquote, from the process are we still have data that tracks them, and they still have, if you will, reactive, in our minds, access to the CSM. But in practice, the CSM takes into ownership the implementation process and handholds those, even if they're post-implementation, they handhold them even 2 months in or 3 months in. But once we're done at a certain point, that client basically data-wise leaves the process and a new one walks in, and it allows us, and we're backing this up with data. This is currently the most effective process we found for our client base, for the small businesses. And a lot of software providers find that there is an implementation process for a reason. The fastest you go into the product and the better you learn it out of the gate, the more likely you are to use it long term. And this is currently one of our biggest mindset approaches, that get to them fast and get them adopted as fast as possible. We still have a lot of retention opportunities long term, a long tail, if you will, or a lot of names to those that come after. and we do work with them at a lower scope. But the reason we're able to keep this cost effective and keep a positive ROI for a CSM is they are able to handle a bulk of clients at a time, and it's dynamic. It keeps flowing over time. To sign this process off, and what I talked about in the beginning of the slide is that even the higher tiers that used to buy Visita and not even log into the system, I'm not seeing those as a common thing anymore, because perseverance is a very needed competency for CSM when it comes to very small businesses. They wear all the hats. Midday, they work with their clients. At the beginning of the day, they can be the janitor or the finance department. At the end of the day, they just want to run home and be with their family. Getting a hold of them is not an easy task. And if you give up after 1 try or 2 tries or even 5 tries, you haven't done yourself justice. Again, don't be overly pushy, because that really pushes some of them away. But perseverance is really a key to succeeding with them, because once you made a valuable engagement with them, they're a lot more likely to carry on the relationship. We see this in the data. So this is really something to keep in mind.
Are you using some sort of tool to manage that? Because that's a lot of data.
It is a lot of data. Fortunately, I'm a mathematician and I love data. We use Looker as our BI resource, and we use HubSpot, both for reports and working with the clients. The manager of the customer success team, her day-to-day, her bread and butter is mainly HubSpot, and reports she pulls out of that. And I cooperate with her on HubSpot, but I mainly send the data over from Looker. I'm very much a fan of Looker, and I think it can do great for any company that chooses to use it. And I'm really objective about this. I have absolutely no stock in Looker. Any questions about this before I go to the scaling part of the process? How we approach each of them?
Let's go on, Barak, because we have only 15 minutes. So let's continue and then stop for questions.
I thought I'll go over this too fast, so I'm actually happy to hear. So I'll do this real fast. How do we scale the process? Because again, we need to keep a very high book of business at a time. And we need to adapt our process to the client itself. So is it a one-man show? If it is it worth our time? Is it cost effective to work with them? Might be if they're the highest tier of subscription, but segments come in only if it's a very established business that we know if we get to them, they'll stick around. That's our experience. If you find a one-man show that's a new business, most likely they're not. If we can choose a bigger account to focus on in our customer success, we will do it, because data proves they have higher adoption and retention rates. That goes for teams and partnerships. They're a more stable business. They have higher retention, higher adoption rates, and it also, and this is cross SaaS, I believe. Annual accounts are a lot more likely to interact with you and to adopt your product than monthly subscribers who, especially in the small business industry, maybe might take this as a trial. I'll pay a bit because it's not significantly expensive. And if this works great, maybe I'll upgrade to annual. But those that come in with the annual mindset, it is more cost effective for them. Annual is cheaper long term. That's a client that for customer success it is a better client because they interact with you, they listen to you, and they want to work with you. You still need to persevere to get to them, but once you do, it works much better. I'll very quickly talk about the segmentation and jump over to the product section. We've had many cycles of segmentation. The one we work today and we find it to be quite effective is 3 segments from bottom to top, basically a new business. And we have a specific playbook for them. A running business, that's a business that has some miles on it, and a well-established business. Each segment has its playbook, has its approach from the customer success perspective, and success rates, obviously. If we're able to get to those well-established ones and get them to adopt, they're the ones that are most likely to be retained over a long period of time. Any questions about that before I talk a bit about our great product loop, feedback loop?
So you mentioned the segmentation. The customer success managers are working with all the segments or just with the high-tier customers?
Even the high-tier customers, subscription-wise, can be new businesses. You can be a new business with, I mean, think about a new law firm or a new, even coaching business can have several coaches, or a new clinic that has several practitioners. It can be a team. It can be a new business on our higher tier plans. And the way we'll approach them, because we see those by annual accounts, the way we approach them is with the experience we've had over the past with similar professions and similar businesses, best practices we've learned, and how Visita usually works well for those. While with the well-established ones, we basically make the opposite effort, where we make a very big effort to understand what worked for them over many years of getting them established, and how it would be easy for them to use Visita with the same processes. So that's kind of the 180 between the two playbooks. Okay. Great. So how we interact with our product team. We've grown a lot in Visita, but the communication is really open. There is no hierarchy as far as who talks to who. If it's support, customer success, and sales, the relationship and the communication between them and the product team is very close. And it's a customer first approach. So one thing we did this year, and I'm really proud of that process, is we basically changed the way our product team looks at their pipeline. Every enhancement idea, every new feature idea is something that came from a client-facing team. If it's sales that lost leads, and will request that feature to not lose leads. If it's customer success during the onboarding process, to surface those that we're losing because there are gaps, or from support, those that long-term complain about the same thing over and over again. And I know this might sound trivial, but today, the teams that manage those, we do this in Jira, and the teams that manage the use cases and the votes are from the client-facing teams. Eventually, what product does is they build their roadmap based on that. They would look at the most voted feature that we admin for them in Jira. We would have a quarterly discussion between everyone that wants from the client-facing teams and the relevant product team to talk about the vertical we want to focus on from the product element, and what's the experience from the field, what features and what use cases in those features we should focus on to not lose leads on one hand, but on the other hand, retain as much as we can. For me, this is something I'm very proud of. This is a shift we've made this year. Another element that our product team does is when they start the process of a new feature, they reach out to a lot of professionals and interview them. A big chunk of that are existing clients of Visita that usually have a relationship with our customer success or support team, or if it's they just look at the data and find those professions that are heavy users and just try and schedule an interview with them. The last part is customer groups. We have a Facebook group that's for existing clients. They can register to this on request. It's not the Facebook page, it's an actual group that was born out of new feature ideas, but today it's really a community where they surface ideas to us. They would even sometimes complain about support because it's social media and they can. And our product team and our client-facing team would also interact with them there and ask them questions, ask them for ideas, ask them for use cases. We also have a customer group that approved to receive open surveys from us, open question surveys, and that works great for our product process. I think that, look at the notes. Those are the points. I think I covered most things I wanted to talk about. Open to questions now or later. This is my email. It's very easy to remember.
So, Barak, can you go back to the previous slide, the one before with the team? Yes. So, so you mentioned that. So not sure where it was. Never mind. You mentioned that you handle in Hightouch mode at the beginning of the relationship with the customer, and then you sort of let go. How do you know when to let go, and what does it mean to let go? So how long are you keeping this Hightouch relationship with the customer?
So data is the answer. Data and relationship. So a client can go into a cycle of the CSM when they have zero traction in the system, or data-wise, they're already adopted, meaning they've done a lot of actions in the system with their clients, and it's already giving them value. So the two elements of graduating from a CSM's initial review, because that's the focus, but like you said, there is a very minor focus after the adoption period. The two ways to get to that is A, if the client is heavily using the software and is engaging less with us because there is no need. Mm-hmm. And two, if time ran out. We usually time it as 3 months because that's the sweet spot we found in our data. If they're able to adopt in the first 3 months, they're more likely to be retained for a long period of time.
And is there like a formal communication to the customer saying that, okay, we have finished the Hightouch mode, or is it something gradual?
We don't stop the Hightouch mode in a way that we tell them we're not going to talk to you anymore. Mm-hmm. We keep the door open. Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about such a software is that even with the door open, we're able to maintain a lot of new customers Because once you're adopted, if we've done well in the first stages of the client, they don't need the CSM as much. So that is an advantage. Again, I'm not saying this is perfect. If you, I mean, my biggest thing for next year is the opportunities after the first 3 months. And we were there in the past. I mean, the process we have today is something we decided knowingly to focus on now to see the impact on adoption and retention. And we've kind of, you can say it's neglection, we've kind of neglected the long-term retention because we're working on basically proving that with a system like ours, an adopted client can be retained for a long time.
I also want to ask another question, Barak, if that's okay.
Of course.
So it sounds like you nailed the, sort of high touch that you have, but I'm actually interested more in the clients that you have, let's call it Techtouch communication with. How do you manage that? Is that webinars? Do you communicate them in-app, outside?
We do all of those. This is honestly not a customer success process in Visita. This is a marketing process. We have a, we name it differently in Visita, but we have a pre-sale marketing team and a post-sale marketing team that's focused on nurturing the existing client base, and they do the Techtouch. Their approach is, like you said, in-apps. If it's a new feature, if it's any webinar that we do, we're doing a lot of webinar recently. And what we found actually, maybe you'll find this interesting if you're working Techtouch. About 2 years ago, we had a webinar. We stopped a webinar process that we've had for years. That was what we called an onboarding webinar. Basically, once a week, a CSM would go on a 45-minute webinar with anyone that wanted and present the system. The ROI there was amazingly negative. The registration was low. Maybe the way we advertised it wasn't good enough, but also the attendees eventually, we didn't see any valuable information that we were able to provide them long term because they didn't retain in higher numbers. What we find today, and that's something really good that our marketing team does, is business-specific webinars. We host small businesses, and they talk about what makes them successful, how they capture leads, how they market themselves, how they manage how they expanded. We find that those have a really high registration rate. We find those to be very strong for our brand. It was so successful that this started as an initiative and became a process where we have basically a webinar roadmap in this specific process.
Sounds very impressive. Sounds good.
I agree. I'm going to come and sniff around.
You're welcome.
Yeah? All right.
I'm in the office now if you want. It's very quiet.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so Barak, I want to thank you so much for this session, for sharing with us your clever inputs. And I want to see all of you in our next meetup. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Barak. And have a good evening.